Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku had Gambit's power? Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The air of Geonosis tasted of copper and ancient dust. It was a dry, choking atmosphere, now thick with the acrid smoke of a battle that had spiraled out of the Jedi's control. Outside the cavernous hangar, the war drums of the new era were beating, the rhythmic thump of gunships, the screech of blaster fire, and the mechanical march of the droid armies. But inside the hangar, the silence was heavier than the stone ceiling. Count Dooku, the Lord of Sereno and the political face of the separatist movement, strode across the polished Durecrete floor. His cape, a dark velvet rustle against the stillness, trailed behind him with regal indifference. He did not run. A gentleman never runs, even when the galaxy is collapsing around him. He reached the base of his solar sailor, the elegant craft gleaming under the harsh industrial lights. He turned, his eyes narrowing as he sensed the approach of his pursuers. He could feel them in the Force, bright, desperate flames rushing into the dark. Obi-Wan Kenobi. Anakin Skywalker. Dooku's lips curled into a faint, almost melancholic smile. He raised his left hand, examining his glove. Beneath the leather, he felt the hum, a vibration that had been with him for decades, a secret power he had hidden from the Jedi Council, and even from his former master, Yoda, until it was too late to matter. It wasn't just the Force. It was something structural. A peculiar mutation in his connection to the cosmic energy field. Where others pushed and pulled, Dooku could infuse. He could pour his will into the atomic lattice of solid matter, overfilling the vessel until the molecular bonds screamed in protest, shattering in a release of kinetic violence. He was not just a Sith Lord. He was a living catalyst. The hangar doors hissed open. Obi-Wan Kenobi burst through, his blue lightsaber igniting with a snap hiss that echoed through the cavern. Anakin Skywalker was close behind, his face a mask of youthful fury, his own blade a hum of azure light. "You're not escaping, Dooku," Obi-Wan said, his voice breathless but steady. He moved into the Sorisu opening stance, feet planted, blade high. Dooku turned fully to face them. "Master Kenobi. You have interfered with my affairs for the last time. You'll pay for all the Jedi you've killed today, Dooku!" Anakin shouted, stepping forward, his aggression radiating off him like heat waves. Dooku sighed, a sound of profound disappointment. "Brave, but foolish, my old Jedi friend. You are impossibly outnumbered." "I don't think so," Obi-Wan countered, glancing around the empty hangar. "The droids are outside. It is just you and us." "I was not referring to droids," Dooku said softly. He reached out with the Force. But he did not grip Obi-Wan's throat, nor did he hurl a crate with telekinetic shove. Instead, Dooku focused his mind on a heavy, Durasteel fuel canister sitting on a repulsor sled 10 meters to Obi-Wan's left. The connection was instant. Dooku felt the cold, rigid stillness of the metal atoms. With a mental flex, he poured the dark side into the object. "Wake up," he commanded the metal. The canister began to glow. It wasn't the heat of fire. It was a terrifying, neon-violet luminescence that seemed to bleed from the core of the steel. The air around the canister distorted, rippling with a high-pitched, harmonic whine that set the teeth on edge. Obi-Wan's eyes widened. He had felt the surge in the Force, but it felt wrong, bloated, pressurized. "Anakin, get down!" Dooku flicked his wrist. The canister didn't fly at them. It simply let go of its own existence. KRKOM. The explosion was not chemical. It was pure kinetic rejection. The canister detonated with the force of a turbolaser impact. A shockwave of purple energy rippled outward, shattering the repulsor sled and turning the Durecrete floor into shrapnel. Obi-Wan was lifted off his feet as if struck by a giant's hammer. He flew backward, crashing into the rock wall of the hangar with a bone-jarring crunch. His lightsaber skittered across the floor, deactivated. He slumped, groaning, his vision swimming in a haze of violet afterimages. "Obi-Wan!" Anakin screamed. The boy didn't retreat. He attacked. Anakin launched himself into the air, a blur of motion, bringing his saber down in a heavy gem so strike intended to cleave Dooku in two. Dooku drew his curved hilt lightsaber with fluid grace. The crimson blade intercepted the blue with a shower of sparks. The impact was heavy. Skywalker was strong, incredibly so, but Dooku was a master of leverage. He parried the strike, spinning away, his cape swirling like a matador's cloth. "You have power, boy," Dooku noted, his voice calm amidst the chaos. "But you lack imagination," Anakin roared, slashing horizontally. Dooku stepped back, his left hand dropping to his belt. He didn't carry thermal detonators. He carried simple, polished metal spheres, ball bearings made of dense frick alloy. He palmed one. In the fraction of a second it rested against his skin, he channeled a lethal dose of kinetic potential into it. The ball bearing glowed with that signature, sickly violet light. As Anakin swung again, Dooku sidestepped and flicked the small metal sphere at the ground between Anakin's feet. Ping! The sphere hit the floor and detonated instantly. The blast was concentrated, a directed eruption of force. It blew a crater into the floor and sent Anakin stumbling backward, his robes singed, his balance compromised. The sheer concussive noise was deafening in the enclosed space. Anakin coughed, waving away the dust, his eyes burning with yellow-rimmed fury. What is that? Physics, Skywalker, Dooku replied, adjusting his grip on his saber. The Jedi view the Force as a river. I view it as a fuse. Anakin charged again. This time, he was wary of the environment. He used the Force to pull a rack of tools toward Dooku, hoping to distract him. Dooku didn't dodge. He reached out with his left hand and slapped the incoming tool rack mid-air. Contact. Charge. The metal rack glowed bright pink for a microsecond before exploding into a shotgun blast of superheated shrapnel. Dooku shielded his face with his cape, using the Force to deflect the worst of the debris, but the explosion forced Anakin to skid to a halt, covering his head. "You can't fight what you can't touch!" Anakin yelled, trying to circle the Sith Lord. On the contrary, Dooku mused, walking slowly through the smoke, the red glow of his saber illuminating his sharp features. "I only need to touch something near you. Or perhaps, something of you." The duel resumed, but the rhythm was grotesque. It was not the elegant dance of lightsabers Dooku preferred. It was a jagged, staccato rhythm of clashes punctuated by violent detonations. Dooku would parry, then touch a pillar. Anakin would have to leap away before the stone shattered explosively. Dooku would lock blades, then kick a piece of debris at Anakin, charging it with his foot upon contact. Anakin would be forced to force-push the bomb away before it blew in his face. The young Jedi was sweating profusely, his breathing ragged. He was fighting a swordsman who was also an artillery battery. "You're slowing down, Count," Anakin taunted, though his voice wavered. "That trick, it tires you out." Dooku narrowed his eyes. The boy was perceptive. The kinetic charge was taxing. It drew upon his physical stamina as much as his force reserves. Every explosion was a piece of his own vitality thrown into the world. He could feel the ache in his joints, the thudding of his heart. He needed to end this. "Perhaps," Dooku admitted. "But I only need one moment of contact." Anakin saw an opening. Dooku's saber was low. Anakin lunged, a thrust aimed at the Count's heart. Dooku didn't parry. He stepped into the guard. It was a risky move, one that brought them face to face, inches apart. Anakin's blue blade hissed past Dooku's shoulder, scorching the fabric of his cape. But Dooku's left hand shot out. He didn't grab Anakin's throat. He didn't push him. Dooku's gloved fingers wrapped firmly around the metallic emitter matrix of Anakin's lightsaber hilt. Time seemed to freeze. Anakin looked down, confused. Why grab the weapon? Then he felt it. The vibration. The heat. The hilt in his hand began to whine, the metal growing instantly hot against his mechanical palm and his flesh hand. A violet aura consumed the weapon's casing. "Let go," Dooku whispered, his voice almost gentle. Panic, cold and absolute, seized Anakin. He tried to deactivate the blade, tried to drop it, but the kinetic charge had already magnetized the components, locking the mechanism. The energy density reached critical mass in a fraction of a second. Flash. The explosion was small but devastatingly focused. Anakin's lightsaber didn't just break, it atomized. The blast shredded the metal casing and the focusing crystal simultaneously. Anakin screamed, a raw, guttural sound of agony. The explosion tore through his right arm. Metal fingers, wires, and flesh were obliterated in a flash of purple fire and shrapnel. The concussive force threw Anakin backward across the hangar. He landed hard, rolling to a stop near the unconscious Obi-Wan. Anakin lay there, clutching the smoking stump of his arm, his eyes wide with shock. The pain was distant, overwhelmed by the sheer suddenness of the violence. Dooku stood tall, shaking his left hand as if to cool it. Smoke rose from his glove. He looked at the fallen Jedi, his expression unreadable. A pity, Dooku said, smoothing his tunic. I warned you about the potential energy in all things. Even your own weapons. He raised his red lightsaber, preparing to deliver the coup de grace to the fallen Skywalker. A tapping of a cane echoed from the hangar entrance. Dooku froze. The darkness in the cave seemed to recoil. A presence, vast and ancient, washed over the hangar, displacing the acrid smell of ozone with the scent of swamp mud and rain. Much to learn you still have, Dooku. Dooku turned slowly. Standing in the entrance, diminutive yet casting a shadow that seemed to stretch for miles in the Force, was Yoda. Master Yoda, Dooku said, inclining his head respectfully. I see the Council has finally decided to intervene. Yoda hobbled forward, his ears drooping, his large eyes taking in the carnage, the shattered canister, the cratered floor, the maimed Skywalker. Pain. Suffering. This, you're doing it is? It is the nature of war, Dooku replied. And the nature of my new understanding. Understanding, this is not, Yoda said, his voice firming. Corruption it is. A perversion of the living force. It is power! Dooku snapped, his composure cracking for a moment. It is the power to reshape the galaxy, to break the stagnant molds you cling to. Dooku unleashed a stream of force lightning. It was a test. Yoda raised his hand, catching the blue arcs. He absorbed the energy, swirling it into a ball, and deflected it back. It was the classic interplay of master and apprentice, but Dooku smiled. Predictable. He reached out with his left hand toward a massive, 2-ton hovering cargo crate suspended near the ceiling. He didn't pull it down. He charged it remotely. It was harder at a distance, requiring a massive expenditure of will, but Dooku poured his frustration into the metal. The crate began to glow that sickening violet. Catch, Dooku whispered. He hurled the crate at Yoda. Yoda sensed the danger. He could not absorb this. This wasn't pure force energy. It was a physical object undergoing nuclear destabilization. Yoda leapt into the air, spinning in a blur of green light. He sliced the crate in half with his shoto. It was a mistake. Splitting the charged object didn't stop the reaction, it doubled it. Both halves of the crate detonated mid-air, right above Yoda's head. Boom! The shockwaves slammed Yoda into the ground. The Grand Master tumbled, skidding across the floor, his robes smoking. He recovered instantly, landing on his feet, but his ears were ringing. He looked at Dooku with genuine concern. Unstable, you have become, Yoda noted. Dangerous to yourself, as well. I am merely the fuse, Dooku retorted. He was panting now, sweat beading on his forehead. The remote charge had taken a lot out of him. And you are standing on the powder keg, Dooku charged. He didn't fence with Yoda. Fencing with Yoda was a losing proposition. He used his blade to deflect Yoda's flurry of strikes, but with every parry, Dooku used his free hand to touch the environment. He touched the floor, boom. Yoda flipped away. He touched a fallen droid part, boom. Yoda deflected the shrapnel. He touched the wall, boom. A rock slide buried Yoda's flank. The hangar was turning into an inferno. The noise was apocalyptic. Dooku was painting the room with explosions, forcing Yoda to be constantly moving, constantly defending, but Yoda was relentless. He was a whirlwind of Ataru, too small and too fast to be pinned down. He closed the distance, his green blade humming inches from Dooku's face. Dooku realized he could not win a prolonged engagement. His reserves were draining. His hands were trembling from the kinetic feedback. He needed an exit. His eyes darted to the ceiling. Specifically to the massive geological support pillars that held up the millions of tons of rock above their heads. He looked at Yoda, then at the unconscious Obi-Wan and the moaning Anakin. A choice, my old master, Dooku gasped, backing away toward his ship. Run you will? Yoda challenged, advancing. No, Dooku said, holstering his lightsaber. He raised both hands, palms facing the two largest pillars flanking the hangar entrance. He didn't just push the force. He screamed with it. He channeled every ounce of his remaining kinetic potential into the stone columns. The pillars didn't just crack. They began to vibrate. They glowed a deep, ominous purple, the light revealing the veins in the rock. The stone groaned, a sound like the earth itself was dying. "Stop!" Yoda cried out, realizing the intent. "The weight of the world, Yoda," Dooku whispered. "Can you hold it?" Dooku clenched his fists. The pillars shattered. It wasn't a structural failure. It was a vaporization of the load-bearing sections. The explosion blew out the supports instantly. The mountain above them groaned. A crack, loud as a thunderclap, tore across the ceiling. Massive slabs of rock, each weighing hundreds of tons, began to detach, falling directly toward Obi-Wan and Anakin. Yoda didn't hesitate. He forgot Dooku. He turned his back on the Sith Lord and reached out with both hands toward the falling ceiling. The force poured out of the small green master. It was a visible wave of light. He caught the falling mountain. He caught the debris. He caught the dust. Yoda stood there, eyes closed, face contorted in immense concentration, holding up the roof of the world to save the two Jedi. Dooku watched for a second, a flicker of something, regret? Respect, in his eyes. Then, he turned and walked up the ramp of his solar sailor. The engines whined to life. The ship lifted off, the repulsors kicking up a cloud of dust that washed over the straining Yoda. As the solar sailor blasted out of the hangar and into the Geonosian sky, Dooku collapsed into the pilot's seat. His hands were shaking violently. His skin felt feverish, burnt by the energy he had channeled. He looked down at the planet below, watching the dust settle over the arena. "The war has begun," he whispered to the empty cockpit. He closed his eyes and felt the hum of the universe. It was chaotic. It was explosive. It was beautiful. Back in the hangar, the dust began to settle. The gunships were arriving, their floodlights cutting through the gloom. Yoda lowered the massive rocks to the side, exhaling a long, shuddering breath. He leaned heavily on his cane, looking at the spot where his former apprentice had stood. He looked at the scorch marks. He smelled the lingering ozone of the kinetic blasts. "Changed, he has," Yoda murmured, sadness weighing down his words. "Not just the dark side, something else. A breaker of things he has become." Mace Windu rushed in, followed by a squad of clones. They saw the devastation, the craters, the missing arm of the Chosen One, the pulverized rock. "Master Yoda!" Windu shouted. "Where is Dooku?" Yoda looked at his trembling hand. "Gone," Yoda said. And with him, a new terror. Scene break, the medical transport. The hum of the Republic cruiser was a soothing contrast to the violence of the surface. But inside the medical bay, the mood was frantic. Obi-Wan sat on a biobed, a medroid applying Bacta patches to his bruised ribs and concussion. He watched across the room as the droids worked on Anakin. The boy was unconscious, sedated. The stump of his right arm was cauterized, wrapped in sterile synth flesh. Obi-Wan felt a profound sickness in his stomach. It wasn't the injury. Jedi lost limbs in combat. It was a hazard of the trade. It was how it happened. He replayed the memory. The purple glow. The way Dooku had turned Anakin's own weapon into a bomb. "He played with us," Obi-Wan whispered. Yoda stood by the observation window, staring out at the streaks of hyperspace. "Master Yoda," Obi-Wan said, wincing as he sat up straighter. "What was that?" "I have never read of a Sith ability like that in the archives." "Rare it is," Yoda said without turning. "Ancient. Forgotten. Matter charging, some called it. The ability to infuse the Force into the physical, until hold it, the object cannot." "He turned the environment into a weapon," Obi-Wan said. "He didn't need to outduel us. He just needed to touch something near us." "A volatile variable," Yoda agreed. "Dangerous, Dooku has always been. But this, unpredictable, it makes him. A siege engine, he is." Obi-Wan looked at Anakin. "How do we fight that? You can block lightning. You can parry a blade. How do you block an explosion?" Yoda turned, his face grave. "Distance we must keep. Or strike before the charge he can set." "That requires speed," Obi-Wan noted. "Faster than even Anakin." "Or numbers," Yoda said. But fear I sense. In you. In the boy. I was terrified, Obi-Wan admitted, his Coruscanti accent clipping the words. When that canister exploded, it felt like the air itself was trying to kill me. Fear leads to the dark side, Yoda recited, but his tone lacked its usual conviction. But justified, this fear may be. If teach this power to others, Dooku does, doom we all face. The door to the medical bay hissed open. Padme Amidala rushed in, her eyes immediately finding Anakin. She bypassed the droids, grabbing Anakin's good hand, tears streaming down her face. Obi-Wan looked away, offering them a moment of privacy he shouldn't technically allow. He looked back to Yoda. The Clone Wars have begun, Master. And we are fighting a man who can turn our own ships into bombs with a touch. Yoda gripped his cane. Adapt we must. Or shatter we will. Scene break. Hyperspace. The Solar Sailor, Dooku, sat in the meditation chamber of his ship. He had removed his gloves. His hands were red, the capillaries burst in several places. The skin was hot to the touch. He focused on his breathing, trying to cycle the excess energy out of his system. It was the price of the power. The gambit, as he had privately named the technique during his solitude on Sereno, required a balance. Too much charge, and he would burn himself out from the inside. Too little, and the explosions were mere firecrackers. A hologram flickered to life in the center of the room. The hooded figure of Darth Sidious appeared. Lord Tyrannus, Sidious croaked, his voice oozing with satisfaction. You have escaped. I have, Master. Dooku bowed his head, though he remained seated. He was too tired to stand. And the Jedi? Kenobi and Skywalker are broken. Yoda was stalemated. Sidious paused. He seemed to sense Dooku's condition. You used it. It was necessary, Dooku said. The Grand Master is formidable and reckless, Sidious hissed. That power is a blunt instrument, Tyrannus. I have warned you. It lacks the subtlety of the Sith. Subtlety did not defeat the Jedi in the arena, Master, Dooku countered, his voice gaining a hard edge. Destruction did. Fear did. They were terrified. I saw it in their eyes. They did not understand what they were fighting. Sidious chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. Good. Fear is useful. But be warned, my apprentice. You are becoming a weapon of mass destruction. Do not let the power consume you before our plans are realized. I am in control, Dooku lied. His hands were still trembling. We shall see, Sidious said. Return to Coruscant. The war requires its general. And Tyrannus? Yes, Master? Do not blow up my city. Not yet. The hologram faded. Dooku leaned back, closing his eyes. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a single, heavy credit chip. He rolled it over his knuckles, feeling the cool metal. He let a tiny, microscopic fraction of the force leak into it. The credit glowed a soft, pulsing pink. He smiled. The galaxy was a house of cards. And he was the wind. The High Council chamber of the Jedi Temple was designed for serenity. The circular layout, the panoramic view of the bustling Coruscant skyline, the soft hum of the ventilation, it was all intended to foster clarity of thought. Today, however, the room felt like a tomb. The sun was setting, casting long, blood-orange shadows across the faces of the masters. In the center of the room, a hollow projector displayed a frozen, grainy image captured from the helmet cam of a clone trooper during the evacuation of Geonosis. The image showed Count Dooku. He was not assuming a Makashi salute. He was reaching out toward a durasteel pillar. The pillar was glowing with a violent, sickened violet luminosity. Master Pialo Kun leaned forward, his breathing mask rasping in the silence. We have analyzed the footage 17 times. The energy signature does not match any known Sith technique. It is not force lightning. It is not a Tuta- energy absorption field. Alchemy it is? Yoda asked, his eyes half closed, his small hands gripping the armrests of his hover chair. Closer to physics, Master Yoda, said Madame Jocasta Nu. The chief librarian had been summoned from the archives, an unusual occurrence that spoke to the severity of the situation. She stood by the projector, a datapad in her hand. I have cross-referenced the visual data with ancient texts on the Force variants of the Jun nobility, and the theoretical works of the Chagrian mystics. This is... Matter charging. Mace Winda's brow furrowed. Explain. It is a kinetic transfer, Jocasta Nu said, her voice trembling slightly with scientific horror. Count Dooku is not projecting energy at his opponents. He is projecting energy into matter. He is using the force to excite the molecular bonds of inanimate objects. He fills the vessel until it reaches critical mass, destabilizing the atomic structure. She tapped a button. The hologram played forward. The pillar exploded. It didn't just crack, it vaporized, sending a shockwave that knocked the recording clone trooper off his feet. The result, Nu continued, is a release of kinetic energy equivalent to a baradium core thermal detonator, but without the chemical residue. He turned stone, metal, and glass into bombs. Silence reigned for a long moment. Everything is a weapon, Kiadimundi murmured, stroking his beard. If he can charge a pillar, can he charge a door? A floor? A ship's hull? Theoretically, yes, Nu confirmed. The only limitation appears to be the mass of the object and the time required to charge it. Smaller objects detonate instantly. Larger structures require sustained contact. Skywalker's arm, Obi-Wan Kenobi spoke up. He was seated in one of the lower chairs, his side heavily bandaged, his face pale. Dooku grabbed the hilt of his lightsaber. Anakin couldn't drop it. The mechanism fused before it exploded. He turned a Jedi's weapon into a grenade, Mace Windu said, his voice hard as flint. This changes the rules of engagement. We teach our Padawans to block blaster bolts and parry lightsabers. How do you block a molecular destabilization? You cannot deflect an explosion with a lightsaber. Distance, Yoda said softly. The only defense, distance is. Engage him. We must not, in close quarters. He is a Sith Lord, Master Yoda, Windu countered. We cannot simply avoid him. He is leading the Separatist army. If he takes the field, he will decimate our clones. Imagine if he touches a walker? Or a shield generator? A living siege engine, Obi-Wan whispered, echoing his master's sentiment from the transport. There is another factor, Jocasta Nu added. The energy drain. Look at the footage. She zoomed in on Dooku's face as he boarded his ship. The pixels were blurry, but the exhaustion was evident. He was slumped, his skin gray. This power violates the conservation of energy. To create such force, he must be drawing heavily from his own biological reserves. He is burning his own life force to ignite the world. Then he has a limit, Windu said, seeing the tactical opening. He cannot do this forever. If he is pressed, if he is forced to overextend, or, Yoda interrupted, kill us all, he will, before tired he becomes. Yoda looked out the window at the darkening sky. The Clone Wars had begun, not with a clash of ideals, but with a terrifying evolution of violence. The Sith had returned, not just as sorcerers, but as scientists of destruction. The Palace of Sereno, the precipice of the cliffs of Sereno was draped in mist. The ancestral home of House Dooku stood as a monolith of dark stone and black glass, a testament to wealth and power that predated the Republic's meddling laws. In his private sanctum, Count Dooku sat in a high-backed chair upholstered in crimson Nerf leather. The room was dimly lit, illuminated only by the fireplace where exotic hardwoods burned with the scent of cinnamon and sulfur. Dooku stared at his hands. They were elegant hands, long-fingered and steady, the hands of a musician or a surgeon. But now, they were wrapped in Bacta-infused bandages up to the wrists. The pain was a dull, throbbing ache deep in the marrow. The microfractures in the metacarpals are healing, my lord, a medical droid chimed, retracting a scanner. However, the cellular degradation in the fingertips suggests exposure to extreme radiation. I advise against further exertions for at least 3 standard days. Your advice is noted, Dooku said, his voice smooth and cold. Leave me. The droid bowed and hovered out of the room. Dooku peeled back the bandage on his left index finger. The skin was slightly discolored, a faint purple bruising that wouldn't fade. He reached for a goblet of wine on the table next to him. As his fingers brushed the crystal stem, he felt it. The hum. The song of the atoms. The glass was not solid to him. It was a swirling chaotic lattice of potential energy waiting to be unleashed. He had to exercise immense control just to hold the glass without blowing it apart. It was an intoxicating power. For years, as a Jedi, he had been taught to respect the stillness of the Force. To listen? To guide. But the dark side demanded action. It did not want to flow. It wanted to burst. He took a sip of the wine, savoring the vintage. The door to his sanctum slid open. He did not turn. He sensed the jagged, hungry presence before she even stepped over the threshold. "You are late, Asajj," Deku said. Asajj Ventress prowled into the room. She was bald, pale, and moved with the lethal grace of a viper. She wore her dark robes, and her twin lightsabers hung at her hips. She looked around the opulent room with a mix of envy and disdain. "I was hunting spies in the capital, my master," she rasped. "Sereno is crawling with Republic sympathizers. Insects," Deku dismissed. "I have a new lesson for you. One that requires your full attention," Ventress smirked. "Another fencing lesson? I have mastered the Makashi forms you taught me." "You have mastered the mechanics of a duel," Deku corrected, setting down his wine. "You have not mastered the art of war." He stood up. Even bandaged, he was an imposing figure. "Follow me." They descended into the lower levels of the palace, to a vast training hall built of reinforced durasteel. The floor was scarred from lightsaber burns and blaster impacts. "Attack me," Deku ordered, standing in the center of the room. He did not draw his weapon. Ventress hesitated. "You are unarmed." "I am never unarmed," Deku replied. Ventress's eyes narrowed. She drew her twin blades, the red plasma hissing to life. She launched herself at him, a spinning blur of aggression. Deku did not move until the last second. He sidestepped her downward slash with minimal effort. As she passed him, his hand brushed the long, trailing fabric of her sash. "Charge!" He poured a precise, non-lethal amount of energy into the fabric. Ventress landed and turned to strike again, but she heard the high-pitched whine. She looked down at her waist. Her sash was glowing bright violet. Her eyes went wide. Boom! The explosion was small, equivalent to a flashbang, but it was point-blank. It threw Ventress backward. She slammed into the wall, her breath knocked out of her, her robes singing. She scrambled to her feet, coughing, her lightsabers raised defensively. What did you do?" "I touched you," Deku said calmly. "If I had desired it, I could have charged the armor weave over your heart. You would be dead." Ventress snarled, her humiliation fueling her rage. "A trick, physics," Deku corrected again. He walked over to a table where a stack of heavy, platinum credits sat. He picked one up. It was a dense, heavy coin, the size of a biscuit. "The Jedi believe the Force is a shield," Deku lectured, flipping the coin over his knuckles. "They believe it binds the galaxy together. But binding requires tension. And where there is tension," he flicked the coin. It flew through the air, faster than a blaster bolt. Ventress instinctively raised her sabers to deflect it. "Don't deflect," Deku warned. Ventress dodged instead, rolling to the left. The coin hit the wall behind her. KRKOM. The detonation blew a hole in the durasteel wall 3 meters wide. The shockwave knocked Ventress flat again. Dust and debris rained down on her. She lay there, staring at the smoking crater. A coin. A simple coin had done that. Deku walked toward her, his cape billowing in the settling dust. "Potential energy, Asajj. It is in everything. The floor you stand on. The air you breathe. The hilt of your weapon." Ventress looked at her lightsabers with sudden suspicion. "Yes," Deku smiled thinly. "Imagine the fear. A warrior who cannot be engaged. A warrior who turns the environment into a minefield. This is the power I wield now. The power of the kinetic lord." Ventress stood up slowly, dusting off her leathers. The anger in her eyes was replaced by a hungry awe. "Teach me," Deku laughed, a dry, sharp sound. "No, child. This power is not taught. It is intrinsic. A mutation of the connection to the Force. But I can teach you how to use the fear it creates." He gestured to the debris. "The Jedi are terrified of the erratic. They rely on patterns, forms, predictions. When you fight, you must not just strike. You must destabilize, make them believe the ground itself is their enemy." He tossed another coin to her. She caught it, flinching slightly. "It is not charged," Deku said. "But you flinched. That is the lesson. Once they see the power, they will fear every touch, every object. You have already won the duel before you ignite your blade. Ventress gripped the coin, her smile returning. Psychological warfare, combined with kinetic supremacy, Deku said. He looked at his bandaged hands. However, the cost is high. It drains the body. It requires precision. You will be my shield, Asajj. While I prepare the charge, you will keep the Jedi occupied. You will force them into the trap. I understand, Master. Ventress bowed low. Good. Prepare your ship. We are going to Ryloth. Ryloth? The Twi'lek homeworld is under siege, Deku said, turning back to the lift. The Republic has sent a fleet. It is time to demonstrate that their star destroyers are nothing more than very large, very expensive floating bombs. The works Coruscant Industrial Sector. Deep in the industrial bowels of Coruscant, far from the gleaming spires of the temple, lay a decommissioned factory known as the Works. It was a place of shadows and rust. Darth Sidious walked along a catwalk, his hooded cloak dragging through the grime. He stopped, looking down into a vast smelting pit. A hologram flickered to life from a projector concealed in his robes. It was Deku. The preparations for Ryloth are complete, my master, Deku said. He looked better than he had on the ship, but there was still a hollowness around his eyes. You are eager, Tyrannus, Sidious rasped. Perhaps too eager. The Republic fleet is vulnerable. I can break their blockade in a single standard hour. With your new talent? Sidious asked, the word dripping with skepticism. It is effective. It is loud, Sidious snapped. The Sith have survived for a millennium by remaining in the shadows. By being the phantom menace. You are becoming a spectacle. Is that not the point of the war? Deku countered, a hint of aristocratic arrogance bleeding through. To create fear? To show the galaxy that the Jedi cannot protect them? Sidious paced a small circle. He was genuinely wary. When he had chosen Deku, he had chosen a political idealist, a swordsman, a fallen Jedi. He had not anticipated Deku unlocking a force ability this volatile. It shifted the balance of power. If Deku became too powerful, he might challenge Sidious for the mantle of the master sooner than the grand plan allowed. A bomb does not need a master. It only needs a target. Remember, Tyrannus, Sidious warned, his voice dropping to a serpentine hiss. Power without control is suicide. You are burning your own life to fuel these explosions. If you burn too bright, you will turn to ash. And I will replace you. Deku's hologram stiffened. I serve the grand plan. Serve it wisely. Do not destroy the prize before we have claimed it. I want the Republic on its knees, not vaporized. As you wish. The hologram faded. Sidious stood in the darkness. He felt a disturbance in the Force. A ripple. The timeline was shifting. Deku's power was accelerating events. The fear in the Jedi was growing faster than anticipated. This could be useful. Or it could be catastrophic. Sidious smiled. He would have to accelerate his plans for young Skywalker. If anyone could match a living bomb, it was the chosen one. But Skywalker needed to be harder. Stronger. He needed to be insulated against the light. The halls of healing Jedi Temple. Anakin Skywalker sat on the edge of a biobed, shirtless. His chest was covered in sweat. He was staring at his right arm. Or rather, what replaced it. The mechnoarm was a marvel of engineering. Gold-plated alloy, servo motors that mimicked human dexterity, nerve linkage that provided sensory feedback. But to Anakin, it looked like a failure. He flexed the golden fingers. The servos whirred softly. Clench. Release. Clench. Release. It takes time to adjust, Obi-Wan said gently. He was standing in the doorway, leaning on a crutch. Anakin didn't look up. It's cold, Master. I can't feel the Force flowing through it the same way. You are more than your arm, Anakin. Am I? Anakin snapped, looking up. His eyes were haunted. Deku didn't just cut it off, Obi-Wan. He blew it up. I felt my own hand turn into a grenade. I felt the heat before the pain. He shuddered, a spasm of post-traumatic stress. Every time I pick up my lightsaber now, I wait for it to explode. Obi-Wan limped into the room and sat on a stool. That is his weapon now. Fear. He wants you to doubt your own tools. How do we fight him? Anakin asked, his voice cracking. I've been running simulations in my head. If I get close, he touches my saber. Boom. If I stay back, he throws charged debris. Boom. If I use the force to pull something, he charges it mid-air. Boom. We have to outthink him, Obi-Wan said. He is relying on the shock. On the kinetic blast. But the blast takes time to charge. The larger the object, the longer the contact needed. Microseconds, Anakin argued. For small things. But seconds for large ones. And it drains him. Did you see him at the end? He was exhausted. Anakin looked at his mechanical hand. He made a fist. The metal creaked. I need armor, Anakin said suddenly. Armor? Insulation. Anakin stood up, pacing the small room. If he charges matter by infusing force energy into the molecular lattice, there are materials that resist the force. Cortosis. Frick. Mandalorian iron. Cortosis is rare and brittle, Obi-Wan pointed out. And Beskar is impossible to get. I can modify the arm, Anakin said, his mechanic's brain taking over, pushing aside the fear. I can line the casing with an energy-dampening field. A portable ray shield generator built into the forearm. If he touches me, the field disrupts the kinetic transfer. Obi-Wan smiled. This was the Anakin he knew. The problem solver. A dangerous experiment. Better than losing the other one, Anakin muttered. There is something else, Obi-Wan said, his tone turning serious. The Council is deploying us again. Soon. Where? Ryloth. Master Windu is leading the assault. But he requested us. Anakin's eyes hardened. Dooku will be there. It is likely. Good, Anakin said. He looked at his golden hand. I have a score to settle. Anakin, Obi-Wan warned. Revenge is not the Jedi way. It's not revenge, Master, Anakin lied, though the darkness swirling in his heart suggested otherwise. It's neutralizing a volatile variable. The laboratory of Count Dooku 2 days later. Dooku stood before a workbench. Scattered across it were not weapons of war, but simple household items. A vase. A date pad. A heavy iron paperweight. He was practicing. He picked up the paperweight. He closed his eyes and visualized the atomic structure. Iron atoms, tightly packed. Infuse. He poured the energy in. But this time, he didn't let it detonate. He held the charge. He maintained the state of instability. The paperweight glowed purple, humming angrily. Sweat beaded on his brow. The strain was immense. It was like holding a compressed spring that wanted to snap. Hold it, he whispered to himself. Delay. He set the glowing paperweight down on the table. He stepped back. 1 meter. 2 meters. The glow persisted. 3 seconds, he counted. 4. Pop. The paperweight exploded. Shrapnel embedded itself in the walls and the ceiling. Dooku exhaled, wiping his forehead. A delayed fuse. He was getting better. He didn't need to be touching the object when it blew. He could create time bombs. He could touch a door handle, walk away, and 5 minutes later, whoever opened it would be vaporized. A chime sounded at the door. Enter. General Grievous stooped as he entered the room, his metal claws clicking on the stone floor. The cyborg general coughed, a rasping, wet sound. Count Grievous growled. The fleet is ready. We await your command to jump to the Ryloth system. General, Dooku nodded. I have a special task for you. I exist to serve, Grievous said, though his eyes darted to the scorch marks on the walls. Even the droid general was uneasy in this room. The Jedi will come for the blockade, Dooku said. They will try to board my flagship. They always do. It is their hero complex. I will crush them. Grievous clenched a fist. No, Dooku smiled. You will let them board. My lord? I am turning the Resolute, my command ship, into a trap, Dooku explained. He picked up a handful of ball bearings from a bowl on his desk. I am going to spend the journey to Ryloth charging specific structural points of the hangar bay. The bulkheads. The airlocks. The blast doors. He looked at Grievous with cold, predatory eyes. When Kenobi and Skywalker land, they will not be stepping onto a ship. They will be stepping inside a bomb. Grievous laughed, a hacking, metallic cough. Diabolical. Science, General, Dooku corrected, pocketing the ball bearings. Pure, applied science. He threw his cape over his shoulder. Let us go. Class is in session. Scene break. The hyperspace route to Ryloth. On the bridge of the Republic cruiser Negotiator, Anakin Skywalker stood at the viewport, watching the blue tunnel of hyperspace swirl past. He wore a new glove over his mechanical hand. It was black leather, thicker than the previous one, interwoven with cortosis weave he had scavenged from the temple armory. Beneath the metal plating of his arm, he had rigged a high-output energy sink. It probably violated 3 safety regulations and voided the warranty on the limb, but Anakin didn't care. Ahsoka Tano, his new Padawan, walked up beside him. She was young, eager, and completely unaware of the horror that awaited them. Master, she said, sensing his tension. You're gripping the railing really hard. Anakin looked down. The metal railing was bending under his mechanical grip. He released it. Just ready to get there, Snips, he said. Master Obi-Wan says Count Dooku might be there, Ahsoka said, her voice dropping. I heard the stories. About Geonosis. Is it true? Can he really blow things up with his mind? Anakin looked at her. He saw the fear she was trying to hide. Yes, Anakin said. He can. How do we stop him? Anakin touched the hidden compartment on his belt where he kept his spare power cells. We don't give him the chance to touch anything, Anakin said, darker than he intended. We move fast. We hit hard. And if he starts to glow... Yeah? Run, Anakin said. Run faster than you've ever run in your life. The NAV computer beeped. Reverting to real space in 5, the clone navigator announced. The blue tunnel shattered into star lines, and then settled into the black void of space. Before them hung the planet Ryloth, a brown and orange sphere. And orbiting it was a blockade of separatist warships, battle stations. Admiral Yularen shouted. Anakin stared at the lead separatist ship. He could feel him. Dooku was there, and for a brief second, through the vast distance of space, Anakin felt a cold, vibrating resonance. It wasn't a taunt. It was a frequency. The entire enemy flagship felt volatile. He's waiting for us, Anakin whispered. Launch the fighters, Obi-Wan ordered from the command deck. The battle for Ryloth had begun. But this would not be a battle of strategy. It would be a race against the fuse. The Ryloth system hung in the black velvet of space, a jewel of browns and terracottas spiraled with white clouds. It was a planet of harsh days and freezing nights, of Twi'lek resilience and ancient wind-carved cities. Now it was a cage. A ring of separatist steel choked the planet. The blockade was a dense formation of Lucahul-class battleships and Munificent-class frigates, their hulls painted in the blue and gray of the Confederacy of Independent Systems. They sat silent and menacing, their turbolasers tracking the drifting debris of the initial Republic defense fleet that had been swatted aside days ago. Exiting hyperspace on the vector furthest from the planet's gravity well, the Republic relief force reverted to real space. 3 Venator-class star destroyers, the Resolute, the Defender, and the Redeemer, arrowed into the system, flanked by a swarm of ARC-170 starfighters and V-19 Torrents. On the bridge of the Resolute, Anakin Skywalker gripped the command railing. His mechanical hand, now encased in the black, cortosis-lined glove, flexed rhythmically. Shields up, Anakin ordered, his voice tight. Launch gold and blue squadrons. I want a screen between us and those battleships. General, Admiral Yularen cautioned, stepping up beside him. The separatist formation is unusual. They aren't assuming an attack vector. They're holding position in a tight cluster. Anakin narrowed his eyes. They're baiting us. They know we have to break the blockade to get supplies to the surface. Or they are protecting something. Obi-Wan Kenobi's voice came over the comms from the Negotiator, which was serving as the rear guard. Be careful, Anakin. I sense a disturbance. It is cold. And heavy. I feel it too, Master, Anakin replied. Dooku is here. Ahsoka Tano stood at the tactical station, her Leku twitching slightly. Master, scanners are picking up a single, small craft detaching from the lead battleship. It's a solar sailor. He's running? Anakin frowned. That's not like him. Not before the fight even starts. He's not running, Ahsoka whispered, staring at the sensor readings. He's stopping. He's just parking. Right in the middle of the debris field, the void. The solar sailor drifted silently in the vacuum, its exotic sails retracted. It sat in the shadow of a massive, jagged asteroid, a remnant of a planetary collision from eons past. Inside the airlock, Count Dooku adjusted the seals of his suit. It was not the armor of a Sith Lord, nor the robes of a count. It was a customized, high-altitude pressurized vac suit, sleek and black, reinforced with fric plating. It was utilitarian. Scientific. He pulled the helmet over his head. The HUD flickered to life, bathing his vision in amber tactical data. The hiss of the oxygen recycler was the only sound, a rhythmic reminder of his own mortality. Pressure stable. Oxygen reserves, 98%. Mag boots, active. Dooku reached for his belt. He did not take his lightsaber. He clipped a pouch of heavy, durasteel bearings to his right hip. Open the outer hatch, he commanded the ship's computer via his helmet comm. Warning, depressurization imminent. Do it. The airlock cycled. The atmosphere vented with a silent rush of crystals. The outer door slid open, revealing the infinite, uncaring night. Dooku stepped out. His mag boots locked onto the hull of his ship with a metallic thud that vibrated up his shins. He walked slowly, methodically, until he stood on the dorsal ridge of the sailor. He looked out at the approaching Republic fleet. The 3-star destroyers were dagger shapes against the stars, their engines burning bright blue. They were magnificent feats of engineering, thousands of crewmen. Durasteel armor meters thick. Deflector shields capable of withstanding turbo-laser barrages. To Dooku, they were simply targets. Large, slow, fragile targets. He raised his hands. He didn't reach for the ships. They were too far. Instead, he reached out with the Force into the surrounding darkness. The Rylos system was cluttered. Asteroids, derelict satellites, the wreckage of the previous battle. Come to me, he willed. A massive chunk of iron-heavy rock, perhaps the size of a shuttle, began to drift toward him. Then another. And a piece of a shattered frigate hull. Dooku closed his eyes within the helmet. He felt the cold, hard lattice of the matter around him. He felt the emptiness between the atoms. He began to pour. He channeled the Force not as a push, but as a filler. He injected his will into the drifting debris. The strain was immediate. His heart rate spiked on the HUD. The kinetic charging required a massive caloric burn. It was like sprinting while lifting a heavy weight. In the vacuum of space, the effect was haunting. The asteroid didn't just glow, it seemed to bleed light. A corona of violet energy erupted around the rock, cracking the surface, leaking purple plasma into the void. The sheer instability of the object caused the space around it to warp, bending the starlight. He charged the second rock. Then the whole fragment. 3 kinetic mines. He opened his eyes. The Republic fleet was entering optimal range. Let us see if your shields can withstand the fundamental breakdown of matter, Dooku whispered. He thrust his hands forward. He didn't just throw them. He used the Force to accelerate them, acting as a railgun. The charged debris rocketed across the gap, trailing streaks of purple fire like comets of doom. The bridge of the Resolute. Incoming projectiles. The sensor officer screamed. High velocity. Moving at sublight impulse speeds. Missiles? Yularen asked. No, sir. Rocks. It's debris. Anakin looked out the viewport. He saw them. 3 streaks of purple light tearing through the darkness. They were moving impossibly fast, faster than any fighter. Evasive maneuvers. Anakin shouted. All power to forward deflectors. They're locking onto the defender. Yularen warned. The first projectile, the charged asteroid, slammed into the forward deflector shield of the defender. In a conventional attack, the rock would have shattered against the shield, or the shield would have flared and held. But this was not a rock. It was a kinetic bomb. Upon contact with the energy field, the asteroid didn't just impact, it released its charge. The molecular bonds of the rock snapped instantly, releasing a burst of energy that existed on a frequency designed to disrupt cohesion. Flash. The explosion was blinding. A sphere of violet light expanded to encompass the entire bow of the Star Destroyer. The defender shields didn't fail. They were bypassed. The kinetic shockwave traveled through the energy barrier, carrying the superheated plasma of the vaporized rock with it. The bridge crew of the Resolute watched in horror as the defender's nose crumpled. The armor plating liquefied. The explosion tore through the forward decks, gutting the ship from the inside out. "Shields down on the Defender," the officer reported, voice shaking. "Hull integrity critical. Fires on all decks. The second projectile is tracking us." Ullarin yelled. "Shoot it," Anakin commanded. "Point defense cannons, fire!" The clones on the gun decks reacted instantly. Streams of blue laser fire reached out, tracking the incoming purple comet. One bolt connected. It was a mistake. The projectile was a piece of wreckage Dooku had charged. When the laser bolt hit it, it didn't deflect. It triggered the reaction early. The debris detonated 2 kilometers off the Resolute's port bow. Boom! There was no sound in space, but the shockwave was a physical wall of force. It slammed into the Resolute. The massive Star Destroyer listed violently to the side. Inside the bridge, sparks showered from the ceiling. Crewmen were thrown from their stations. Anakin grabbed the holodable to stay upright, his metal hand digging into the projector. "Damage report. Port shields are gone." Ullarin gasped, wiping blood from his forehead. "The shockwave. It scrambled our emitter array. We are exposed. Where is it coming from?" Anakin demanded, pulling himself up. "Where is the shooter?" "Visual on the Solar Sailor," Ahsoka called out, her voice high with panic. She put the image on the main screen. There, magnified 1,000 times, stood a tiny, black-clad figure standing on the hull of the small ship. He was raising his hands again. Another asteroid, this one the size of a house, was drifting toward him, glowing that sickening purple. "He's throwing them," Anakin whispered, the realization chilling him to the bone. "He's throwing asteroids at us like snowballs." The hull of the Solar Sailor. Dooku breathed heavily. His suit's climate control was working overtime to cool him, but sweat stung his eyes. Heart rate, 160 BPM. Warning, force reserves depleting. Cellular degradation detected in extremities. "More," Dooku snarled. He felt the immense weight of the new asteroid. This one was heavy. Iron core. Dense. It resisted the charge. He had to force his will into it, breaking the atomic stillness, vibrating the particles until they screamed. The violet glow intensified, turning almost white at the center. He looked at the third Star Destroyer, the Redeemer. It was turning, trying to bring its broadside cannons to bear on him. Too slow, Dooku judged. He swung his arms in a wide arc, a conductor finishing a symphony. He launched a massive rock. The recoil was physical. Dooku was pushed back, his mag boots skidding inches on the hull. The asteroid flew true. The Redeemer opened fire with its turbolasers. Green bolts hammered the space around the incoming projectile, vaporizing smaller rocks, but they missed the core. The charged asteroid struck the Redeemer amidships, right at the hangar bay doors. The detonation was cataclysmic. It wasn't just an explosion, it was a dissection. The kinetic release sheared the Star Destroyer in half. The spine of the ship snapped. The reactor core, compromised by the shockwave, went critical a second later. A second sun bloomed over Ryloth. The Redeemer vanished in a blinding white and purple fireball. Thousands of clones. Jedi pilots. Gone in a blink. Dooku fell to one knee on the hull. He gasped for air, his lungs burning. "Beautiful," he rasped, but he wasn't done. He looked at the Resolute and the Defender. They were damaged, listing, but alive. He reached out again. His vision blurred. A trickle of blood ran from his nose, floating in the zero gravity of the helmet before smearing against the faceplate. He grabbed a smaller piece of debris. A satellite dish. Charge. The surface of Ryloth Nabit province. General Mace Windu stood on a ridge overlooking the capital city. The wind whipped his robes, carrying the red dust of the planet. He was not looking at the droids marching in the valley below. He was looking up. The sky of Ryloth was usually a twilight haze. Today, it was streaked with violence. He saw the flashes in orbit. He saw the new star that had just been born and died in seconds, and then, he felt it. It hit him like a physical blow to the chest. A sudden, massive void in the Force. Thousands of voices crying out in terror, and then, silence. Mace staggered, dropping to one knee. "General?" Commander Pons rushed to his side. "Sir, are you hit?" Mace couldn't speak. The Shatterpoint was agonizing. He saw the fault line of the galaxy cracking open. The death he felt wasn't just the loss of soldiers. It was the nature of the death. It was raw, chaotic, unnatural. He looked up at the sky. Debris from the destroyed Redeemer was entering the atmosphere. Burning meteors streaked across the sky. But mixed with the orange fire of re-entry was a lingering, sickly violet hue. The World Breaker, Mace whispered. Sir? Pons asked, looking at the sky. Get the men underground, Mace ordered, his voice returning, hard and cold. Now. The fleet is not coming. The fleet is dying. But General, the blockade. There is no blockade, Mace said, standing up and igniting his purple lightsaber as he saw the debris raining down toward their position. There is only Deku. A piece of the Redeemer's hull, still glowing with residual kinetic charge, slammed into the mountain range 10 miles away. The ground shook. A mushroom cloud of purple dust rose into the stratosphere. Mace watched the shockwave approach. He planted his feet. He isn't fighting a war, Mace realized. He is conducting an experiment. Space the Resolute. We have lost the Redeemer. Get us out of here. Anakin roared. Jump to hyperspace. Anywhere. We can't. Yularen shouted back. The NAV computer is offline. The gravity well of the planet prevents a jump, then retreat to the far side of the moon. Anakin ordered. Get us out of his range, General, Rex called out from the comms station. General Kenobi is signaling. He says he's launching a fighter run. He says Dooku is exposed on the hull. No! Anakin slammed his fist onto the console. Tell him to abort. He can't get close enough. Dooku will just charge the fighter before he can fire. Anakin looked at the screen. The Defender was burning. The Redeemer was dust. The Resolute was crippled. 3 ships. 3 minutes. 1 man. I'm going out there, Anakin said, turning to the lift. Master, no! Ahsoka grabbed his arm. You can't breathe in space. And your fighter. I have a suit, Anakin said, his eyes burning with a yellow-rimmed intensity that scared her. I'm going to fly a V-wing. I'm going to ram it down his throat. Anakin. Obi-Wan's voice broke through the comms, breathless. Don't do it. Look at the sensor readings. Look at the energy output. Anakin looked at the tactical display. Around the tiny figure on the solar sailor, the readings were spiking off the charts. Dooku wasn't just charging rocks anymore. He was charging the dust. A cloud of micrometeoroids and debris dust surrounded the Sith Lord. He was infusing millions of tiny particles with kinetic energy. He's creating a minefield, Obi-Wan said. A cloud of kinetic instability. Anything that flies into that zone will trigger a chain reaction. You will be vaporized before you are within a kilometer. Anakin stared at the screen. He watched as a stray vulture droid, confused by the chaos, drifted too close to Dooku's ship. It entered the dust cloud. Spark. Spark. Boom. The droid disintegrated instantly, setting off a ripple of explosions that cleared a sphere of space around the Count. It was the ultimate defense. An aura of annihilation. He's unbeatable, Ahsoka whispered. No, Anakin said through gritted teeth. He's tired. Look. On the screen, Dooku had collapsed. He was lying flat on the hull of his ship. The violet glow was fading. He's spent, Anakin said. Now is the time. And we are broken, Yularen interrupted grimly. Main engines are offline. We are drifting. If we engage, we die. We have to use the orbital momentum to swing behind the moon and make repairs. Anakin stared at the fallen Sith Lord. He wanted to kill him. He wanted it so badly his mechanical hand was denting the blast door frame. Take us behind the moon, Anakin whispered, defeated. The solar sailor. Dooku lay on the cold hull plates. The stars were spinning above him. His body was screaming. Every nerve ending felt like it had been stripped raw. His muscles were locked in cramps. He could taste copper in his mouth. Force reserves critical. Physical exhaustion severe. He tried to lift his hand. It trembled uncontrollably. Computer, he rasped, his voice a broken croak. Engage. Automated retrieval. A robotic arm extended from the airlock. It clamped onto his suit, dragging him unceremoniously back toward the hatch. Dooku didn't have the strength to walk. He let the machine pull him. As he was dragged into the airlock, he caught one last glimpse of the battlefield. 3 Venators. 1 destroyed. 2 crippled. The pride of the Republic Navy, reduced to scrap by a single man, the hatch hissed shut. The air cycled. Deku clawed at his helmet, ripping it off. He gasped, sucking in the ship's air, coughing violently. He rolled onto his back, staring at the ceiling of the airlock. He laughed. It started as a wheeze, then grew into a manic, breathless cackle. He held up his hand. Even now, trembling and weak, he could see the faint, residual purple static dancing between his fingers. The power, he whispered. The absolute power. The door to the cockpit opened. General Grievous stood there, his yellow eyes wide. Even the cyborg, who despised the Force, seemed taken aback by the display. Count, Grievous said. The Republic fleet is retreating behind the moon of Ryloth. Our sensors confirm the destruction of the Redeemer. Deku tried to sit up, but failed. He slumped back against the wall. Send the droids to the surface, Deku ordered, his voice weak but commanding. Bombard the capital. Make sure Winda knows. Make sure he knows the sky is no longer safe. Yes, my lord, Grievous said. He hesitated. The droids represent a significant cost. But you destroyed a star destroyer with rocks. Debris, General, Deku corrected, closing his eyes. Potential energy. The men, the Neimoidian captains, Grievous said. They are calling you something new on the comms channel. Deku opened one eye. Oh, they call you the World Breaker. Deku smiled. It was a crude title. Lacking elegance. But accurate. Help me to the med bay, General, Deku said. I need to recharge. And then, we shall see if Master Winda can deflect a mountain. The surface of Ryloth Resistance Cave. The cave was dark, lit only by glow rods. Wounded clones and Twi'lek freedom fighters huddled together. The ground outside was still shaking from the orbital bombardment. Not turbolasers, but the kinetic rain Deku had unleashed. Mace Windu sat by a fire, his face grim. Obi-Wan Kenobi's hologram flickered on a portable projector. We are effecting repairs, Obi-Wan reported. But the Resolute is out of the fight. Anakin is furious. He is working on the engines himself. And Deku? Mace asked. His ship has docked with the blockade flagship. He hasn't been seen since the attack. We believe he is recovering. The energy expenditure must have been massive. Mace nodded. He is mortal, Obi-Wan. We must remember that. He bleeds. He tires. He just destroyed a fleet, Mace, Obi-Wan said, his voice unusually shaken. He stood on a ship in vacuum and threw asteroids at us. We are not equipped for this. We will adapt, Mace said, though he didn't know how. Cham Syndulla, the Twi'lek leader, walked up to the hologram. General Kenobi. General Windu. My people are terrified. They say the sky is falling. They say the Count is a demon who touches the stars and makes them explode. He is a Sith, Mace said. Which is worse? How do we fight him? Cham asked. If we attack his ship, he destroys us. If we stay here, he bombs us. Mace looked at the roof of the cave. He could feel the dark presence in orbit, a pulsing, radioactive wound in the Force. We need to lure him down, Mace said. He is arrogant. He believes he is a god now. We need to challenge that godhood. He won't come down for a duel, Obi-Wan argued. He knows he has the advantage in orbit. He will come down, Mace said, his eyes narrowing, if we threaten the one thing he prizes more than his power. What is that? His legacy, Mace said. His political standing. If we can capture the separatist leaders on the surface. What Tambor is here? If we take him, Dooku will be forced to intervene to prevent the intelligence leak. It's a gamble, Obi-Wan said. It is all we have, Mace replied. The clone troopers are already calling him the World Breaker. Morale is breaking. We need a victory, Obi-Wan. We need to show them that Dooku can bleed. The hologram faded. Mace stood up. He walked to the entrance of the cave. The night sky was lit by the burning wreckage of the Redeemer, streaking through the atmosphere like tragic fireworks. He reached out with the Force, feeling the shatter points of the future. They were everywhere now. Fractures in time. Fractures in space. Dooku had changed the game. The elegant duels of the past were over. The era of the superweapon had begun, and the first superweapon wasn't a Death Star. It was a man. Mace gripped his lightsaber. "Come down, Deku," he whispered to the burning sky. "Come down and face me on the ground, where gravity still holds you." The medbay of the invisible hand. Deku floated in a back-to-tank. The healing fluid was soothing against his burned skin. He drifted in a state of semi-consciousness. He dreamed of fire. He dreamed of atoms splitting. He dreamed of a galaxy where matter obeyed his every whim. He saw the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. He saw himself touching the base of the central spire. Charge! He saw the spire glowing purple. He saw it shattering, raining destruction down on the Senate district. He saw Palpatine's face. The old man was afraid. Dooku smiled in his sleep, bubbles rising from his rebreather. The rule of two demanded that the apprentice eventually surpass the master. Sidious wielded lightning and political intrigue, but Dooku wielded the fundamental forces of the universe. He flexed his hand in the fluid. A small ripple of kinetic energy distorted the Bacta, glowing faintly. The world breaker slept. But he was already dreaming of the next explosion. The nights on Coruscant were never truly dark. The Ecumenopolis was a diamond spinning in the void, a trillion lights fighting back the emptiness. But for Anakin Skywalker, darkness was not a lack of light. It was a sound. It was a hum. A high-pitched, resonant vibration that lived in the back of his skull. He sat upright in his bed, his chest heaving, sweat plastering his hair to his forehead. Beside him, Padme stirred, her breathing soft and rhythmic, a peaceful counterpoint to the chaotic drumming of his own heart. He looked at his right hand. In the dim light of the city glow filtering through the blinds, the golden alloy of his mechno arm gleamed. It was a marvel of cybernetics, responsive and strong. But to Anakin, it looked like a tombstone. He closed his eyes and the nightmare rushed back. The hanger on Geonosis. The cold, aristocratic face of Dooku. The gentle way the Count had reached out. The touch, not a strike. A touch. And then, the sensation of his own lightsaber, the extension of his life, his soul, betraying him. The metal heating up. The atoms screaming. The purple flash that tore his flesh from bone. Anakin clenched a mechanical fist. The servos whined. He squeezed until the metal joints creaked, until the sheets beneath his hand threatened to tear. He wasn't afraid of dying. He was a Jedi. He faced death every day. He was afraid of that. The helpless inevitability of it. How do you fight a man who turns the world against you? How do you cross blades with a fencer who only needs to tap your shoulder to turn you into a bomb? He swung his legs out of bed. He couldn't stay here. The silence was too loud. He needed to move. He needed to sweat. He needed to find a way to kill the world breaker. The Jedi Temple Training Dojo 4. The training room was vast, smelling of ozone and scorched metal. It was 0300 hours, the hour of the wolf as the older masters called it, but the temple never truly slept. Anakin stood in the center of the mat. He was stripped to the waist, his scars pale against his skin. His mechanical arm was uncovered, the gold plating reflecting the harsh overhead lights. Level 10, he commanded the console. Combat simulation, close quarters. Aggressive. 3 HK series assassin droids whirred to life. They held electrostaffs, weapons designed to mimic the resistance of a lightsaber. Begin. The droids attacked in unison. Anakin moved. Usually, his style, Form V, Gem So, was about power. It was about meeting force with greater force, battering through a defense. But tonight, he was fighting differently. He was fighting like a man trying to dodge rain. A droid lunged. Anakin didn't parry. He threw himself backward, a desperate backflip that put 3 meters between him and the staff. Too close, his mind screamed. If that was Dooku, he would have touched the staff. The staff would be a bomb. You're in the blast radius. Anakin landed and thrust his hand out. A massive telekinetic wave slammed the droid into the far wall, crushing its chassis instantly. The second droid swung low. Anakin ignited his lightsaber, blue plasma snapping to life, and sliced the staff in half. Mistake! His instincts roared. You touched his weapon. Contact. Charge. Boom! Anakin shouted in frustration, spinning and slashing the droid into 3 pieces before the upper half even hit the floor. The third droid advanced. Anakin didn't engage. He ran. He used force speed to circle the room, staying perfectly out of reach. He was faster than the machine, a blur of motion. He reached out with the force, gripping a heavy training sphere from the rack on the wall. He hurled it at the droid. If I throw it, he charges it. He throws it back. Stop! Anakin yelled, skidding to a halt. The droid paused, its programming confused by the vocal command amidst a combat scenario. Anakin stood there, breathing heavily. He looked at the droid. In his mind, the durasteel plating of the machine was glowing that sick, violent violet. He couldn't fight. Every move he knew, every kata he had practiced since he was 9 years old, relied on contact. A bind. A parry. A grapple. Against Dooku, contact was death. You are overthinking it, Skywalker. Anakin spun around. Obi-Wan Kenobi stood in the doorway, leaning against the frame. He looked tired, his eyes shadowed, but his presence was warm in the Force. I'm not overthinking, Anakin snapped, deactivating his saber. I'm calculating. And the math doesn't work. Obi-Wan walked into the room. He watched the destroyed droids sparking on the floor. You are fighting a ghost, Anakin. Dooku is not here. He is always here, Anakin muttered, rubbing his mechanical wrist. The whole galaxy is talking about Ryloth. The World Breaker. They say he threw a mountain at the Redeemer. How do we fight that, Obi-Wan? How does Form 3 defend against a mountain? Obi-Wan sighed. We adapt. We are Jedi. We do not let fear dictate our tactics. Fear keeps you alive, Anakin retorted. I lost an arm because I wasn't afraid enough. I thought I could just overpower him. And now I know, Anakin said, his voice dropping to a whisper. I know that if he touches me again, just one finger, I'm gone. There won't be a body to burn. Obi-Wan placed a hand on Anakin's shoulder. Anakin flinched violently, pulling away. Silence stretched between them. Obi-Wan looked at his hand, then at Anakin. The hurt in the older Jedi's eyes was visible. I'm sorry, Anakin said quickly, looking down. I'm on edge. I see that, Obi-Wan said softly. The Council is meeting at dawn. Master Che and the weaponsmiths have been working on a solution. You are not alone in this, Anakin. We are not sending you back out there unprotected. A solution? Anakin scoffed. Unless they found a way to change the laws of physics, I don't see what they can do. Come and see. The Jedi Temple Research and Development Wing. The RD Wing was a section of the temple rarely visited by knights. It was the domain of the artisans, Jedi who focused their connection to the Force on the manipulation of matter and technology. The room was filled with holographic schematics of armor plating, molecular bonding charts, and energy dissipation fields. Mace Windu was there, along with Yoda and Plo Koon. They stood around a table where a set of clone trooper armor lay disassembled. Skywalker. Kenobi, Mace greeted them. He wasted no time. We have been analyzing the data from Geonosis and Ryloth. The kinetic charge Dooku utilizes is a corruption of the Force, but it manifests as a physical energy wave. A tall, thin Jedi with intricate tattoos on her face stepped forward. It was Master Rignima, a doctor and scientist. The charge works by oversaturating the atomic strong force, Nima explained. However, like electricity, it seeks the path of least resistance. It needs a conductive medium to travel from Dooku's somatic field into the object. So we need to be non-conductive, Anakin said, crossing his arms. Precisely, Nima tapped the table. A hologram of a mineral appeared. Cortosis. Cortosis is brittle, Anakin argued immediately. It shorts out lightsabers, yes, but if you hit it with a kinetic blast, it shatters. If Dooku punches a cortosis plate, the plate might not charge, but the impact will crack it. Pure cortosis, yes, Nima agreed. But we are not suggesting pure ore. We have developed a weave. A fibrous mesh of spun cortosis alloy, layered between sheets of duraplast and kinetic dampening gel. She gestured to a mannequin in the corner. It was wearing a modified Jedi tunic. Underneath the leather tabards, a dark, matte black undersuit was visible. It looked heavy, almost reptilian in texture. This is the kinetic dissipation suit, Mark I, Nima said. The cortosis weave creates a dead zone for the Force energy Dooku projects. If he touches the suit, the charge should, theoretically, dissipate across the weave rather than penetrating the object. Theoretically? Obi-Wan asked. We cannot replicate his power, Mace Windu said grimly. We have tested it against high-yield ion bursts and thermal detonators. It holds. Anakin walked up to the suit. He touched the black material. It felt cold, oily. It deadened his sense of touch. It will slow me down, Anakin murmured. It's heavy. Better slow than dead, Plo Koon rumbled. It covers the body, Anakin said, turning to the masters. But what about my saber? What if he touches the hilt again? We have lined the hilt of your new weapon with the same weave, Nima said, handing him a silver cylinder. And we have added a dead man switch. If the internal sensors detect a rapid spike in potential energy, the power cell ejects automatically. Anakin took the hilt. It felt thicker, clumsier than his old one. It ejects? Anakin raised an eyebrow. So if he touches my weapon, I'm disarmed? If he touches your weapon, you lose the weapon, not your hand, Mace stated. It is a trade-off. Anakin gripped the hilt. He hated it. It felt like fighting in a cage. It was defensive. It was reactive. It was an admission that Dooku was superior. And the clones? Anakin asked. Can we outfit the Grand Army with this? Cortosis is rare, Yoda said. Expensive. Only for the Jedi this is. And only for those facing Dooku directly. Anakin looked at the suit. It was black. It looked like armor. I'll take it, Anakin said. But I need to modify it. Modify it? Nima asked defensively. It protects me if he touches me, Anakin said, his eyes darkening. But it doesn't help me stop him. I need more than a shield. I need an edge. The armor is the edge, Skywalker, Mace said sternly. It buys you time to close the distance. Time isn't enough, Anakin muttered. The works sector 4, the industrial sector of Coruscant, was weeping. Acid rain, a byproduct of the thousands of factories churning out war machines, fell in sheets, hissing as it hit the Duacrete walkways. Anakin pulled his hood up. He wasn't wearing his Jedi robes. He was wearing a mechanic's jumpsuit, grease-stained and nondescript. He entered a discreet turbolift in an abandoned processing plant. He punched in a code that didn't exist in any official registry. The lift descended. Down, past the sewers, past the underworld transit lanes, to a private hangar bay tucked away in the labyrinth of the planet's crust. Waiting for him was not a mechanic, but a kindly old man in velvet robes. Anakin, Chancellor Palpatine smiled, his voice warm and grandfatherly. You look terrible, my boy. Anakin lowered his hood. I haven't been sleeping, Chancellor. I can see that. Palpatine gestured for him to walk. They strolled along a catwalk overlooking a massive fusion generator. The hum of the machine was loud, drowning out any potential eavesdroppers. The burden of the war weighs heavily on you. As does your injury. Anakin unconsciously touched his mechanical arm. The Council gave me new armor today. A suit woven with cortosis. To stop the charging. Ah, Palpatine nodded slowly. How pragmatic of them. A shield. Always a shield. It's the best they can do, Anakin said defensively. It might work. It might keep you alive, Palpatine corrected. But will it let you win? Will it stop the world breaker? Anakin stopped. He looked down into the fusion fire. I don't know. He's different, Chancellor. When I faced him, it wasn't just a technique. It was like he was rewriting the rules of reality. He touches something, and it obeys his desire to destroy. Yes, Palpatine purred, stepping closer. He imposes his will upon the universe. That is true power, is it not? The Jedi asked the Force for guidance. Dooku commands the Force to act. It's unnatural, Anakin said, parroting Yoda. Is it? Palpatine asked innocently. Or is it simply stronger? Look at what he achieved. He crippled a fleet alone. He inspires terror across thousands of systems. He has become a symbol of fear. And fear is a potent weapon, Anakin. You feel it, don't you? The fear of his touch? I'm terrified, Anakin admitted, the confession tearing out of him. I'm scared that next time, I won't be fast enough. I'm scared he'll touch Ahsoka. Or Padme. Palpatine placed a hand on Anakin's shoulder. Unlike Obi-Wan, Anakin didn't flinch. Palpatine's touch felt grounding. Solid. The Jedi tell you to release your fear, Palpatine said softly. They tell you to let go. But how can you let go when the lives of everyone you love are at stake? I can't. Then don't, Palpatine whispered. The sound was like a serpent sliding through dry leaves. Grip it, Anakin. Grip the fear. Use it. Why does Dooku win? Because he doesn't hesitate. He pours his energy into the world and makes it explode. He creates bombs, Anakin said. He is the bomb, Palpatine corrected. And you are trying to be a wall. A wall will eventually crack, Anakin. No armor is impenetrable. If you fight him defensively, if you fight him scared of his touch, you will die. Anakin looked at the Chancellor. Then what do I do? You must be the Crusher, Palpatine said. His face was shadowed, his eyes glinting. Think about it. His power relies on the transfer of energy. It takes a split second. A moment of focus. Palpatine raised his hand, curling his fingers into a claw. If you crush the hand before it can touch, if you break the will before it can focus, there is no explosion. You mean, strike first? I mean dominate, Palpatine said with sudden intensity. The Jedi utilized the Force to push, to pull, to lift. Gentle. Passive. But the Force can also constrict. It can crush a windpipe. It can shatter bone from across the room. It can seize a heart and stop it. Anakin's eyes widened. Those are dark techniques. Forbidden. Is it forbidden to save your Padawan? Palpatine asked. Is it forbidden to stop a monster who turns men into ash? Dooku has evolved, Anakin. The Jedi are stagnant. If you want to defeat a kinetic lord, you cannot play by the rules of a fencing match. Palpatine walked to the railing. He uses the Force to expand matter until it breaks. You must use the Force to compress matter until it submits. Anakin looked at his mechanical hand. He clenched it. The servos whined. Compress. Grip the Force tighter, Palpatine urged. Don't let it flow. Seize it. Make it yours. When you face him, don't look for an opening to strike with your saber. Look for his hands. And crush them. Anakin stared into the fire. He imagined Dooku's elegant hands. He imagined reaching out with his mind, not to push Dooku away, but to grab those hands and squeeze until the bones turned to dust. A dark, cold thrill shot through his spine. It wasn't peace. It was power. They won't teach me that, Anakin whispered. No, Palpatine agreed sadly. They won't. They would rather you die with honor than live with power. But I believe in you, Anakin. You are the chosen one. You are meant to bring balance. Perhaps balance means meeting a world breaker with a world crusher. The Jedi Temple. Anakin's quarters. Anakin returned to his quarters late. Padme had gone. She had senatorial duties in the morning. He was alone. On his workbench lay the kinetic dissipation suit. He had taken it apart. He was welding. He wasn't removing the cortosis. He was adding to it. He was reinforcing the joints of the mechanical arm. He was stripping the safety limiters on the servos. If the Jedi wanted him to wear armor, he would. But he wouldn't be a turtle. He would be a tank. He picked up a piece of scrap metal, a thick bolt of durasteel. He held it in his flesh hand. He closed his eyes. He remembered Palpatine's words. Compress. He didn't use the Force to lift the bolt. He focused his will on the space around the bolt. He imagined the air turning to solid duracrete. He imagined a vice closing in. He pushed his anger into the grip. The anger at Dooku. The anger at the Council. The fear of the purple light. Crunch. Anakin opened his eyes. The durasteel bolt was bent double. It looked like it had been put in an industrial press. It wasn't an explosion. It was an implosion. He breathed out, a shuddering breath. It was exhausting. It felt gritty. Dirty. But it worked. He looked at the suit. He began to paint. The Jedi robes were traditionally beige and brown. This suit was black. He decided to leave it black. He added a tabard of dark leather. He picked up his new lightsaber. He engaged the emitter. The blue blade hissed. No more fear, he whispered to the empty room. He wasn't going to just block Dooku. He was going to break him. Coruscant, the Senate district. The next morning, the news feeds were full of it. The World Breaker strikes Ryloth. Jedi fleet crippled. Is Coruscant next? Holograms showed the burning wreckage of the Redeemer. They showed grainy footage of Dooku on the hull of his ship, surrounded by the aura of destruction. In the Senate rotunda, panic was palpable. Senators were shouting, demanding increased funding for planetary shields, demanding the clone army be doubled. Palpatine stood on his podium, his face a mask of grave concern. "My friends," he boomed, his voice amplified to fill the massive chamber. "The threat we face is unprecedented. Count Dooku has unlocked a terrible power. He threatens the very stability of our worlds." A roar of agreement, but Palpatine raised a hand. "Let us not succumb to terror. For while the Separatists have a world breaker, the Republic has its heroes. We have the Jedi." He looked up toward the Jedi box, where Yoda and Mace Windu sat stone-faced. "And we will give our protectors every resource, every credit, every weapon they need to silence this threat. We will not be held hostage by a terrorist with a bomb in his blood." Applause thundered. High above, in the shadows of a private box, Count Dooku's spy, a nondescript aide, recorded the speech. Sereno the Palace. Dooku watched the recording. He was sitting in his garden, surrounded by rare flowers. He looked better. The Bacta had done its work. The burns on his hands were now pink scars, fading slowly. He smiled as he watched Palpatine speak. He knew the script. He knew his role. He was the villain. He was the monster under the bed that made the galaxy beg for a dictator to save them. But there was something else. A variable Palpatine hadn't accounted for. Dooku looked at his hand. He picked up a flower, a delicate, white blossom. He channeled the smallest possible amount of energy. A microcharge. The petals didn't explode. They simply disintegrated into a fine, purple mist, shimmering in the sunlight. He was beginning to understand the nuance. It wasn't just about big booms. It was about frequency. If he could match the resonance frequency of a specific material, say, the glass steel of the Senate dome, or the bones of a Jedi Master, he wouldn't need a massive charge. He would just need a tap. He looked at the hologram of the Jedi Temple. "They are building armor," Ventress said, stepping out of the shadows. "My spies report the Jedi are equipping Skywalker with cortosis weave." Dooku chuckled. Cortosis. How quaint. They think to insulate themselves against the storm. Will it work? It might absorb the initial kinetic transfer, Dooku admitted. It will make them brave. It will make them close the distance. And that is bad? No, Asajj. Dooku stood up, crushing the stem of the flower. That is perfect. I want them close. I want them to feel safe. He turned to her. Because when they are close, they cannot see the sky. The sky? We are going to Jun, Dooku announced. My ancestral home. The Chateau Malrose. Why Jun? Ventress asked. It is a wasteland. Acid rain. Desolate. Exactly, Dooku smiled, a predator showing his teeth. The Jedi are preparing for a duel. They are preparing for armor and lightsabers. He gestured to the sky. I am going to show them that on Jun, the rain itself is a weapon. He walked past her. Send a transmission to the Jedi Council. Encrypted, but crackable. Let them know where I am. Let them come to me. It's a trap? It is a test, Dooku said. For me. And for young Skywalker. I want to see if his new armor can withstand the weight of a collapsing castle. The Jedi Temple hangar bay. Anakin walked onto the loading ramp of the shuttle. He was wearing the suit. The kinetic dissipation suit mark I transformed him. The black armor plating over the cortosis we've made him look broader, darker. The leather tabards were black. His cape was black. He looked less like a Jedi and more like a wraith. Ahsoka was waiting for him. She wore a lighter version of the weave under her tunic. You look scary, Master, she said honestly. Anakin pulled on his gloves. The leather creaked. Good, Anakin said. Scary is what we need. Obi-Wan arrived, looking at Anakin's new attire with a frown. It is functional, I suppose? Though it lacks the traditional aesthetic. Tradition didn't save the Redeemer, Anakin said flatly. Yoda hobbled up. He looked at Anakin for a long time. He tapped his cane on Anakin's shin guard. Armor you wear, Yoda said. To protect the body. But the mind, unprotected it is. My mind is focused, Master, Anakin said. Focused on what? Yoda asked. Stopping Dooku? Or crushing him? Anakin didn't answer. He turned and boarded the ship. Yoda watched him go. The Grand Master's ears lowered. He felt the shadow of the dark side clinging to the boy, woven into the very armor that was supposed to save him. Begun, the Shadow War has, Yoda whispered. The shuttle lifted off, heading for the stormy world of Jun. Toward the trap. Toward the rain. Anakin sat in the dark of the hold, closing his eyes. He practiced the grip. Compress. He was ready to crush the world breaker.